markets from the Global Melon and Watermelon event. It's my pleasure to host this event from the studio in De Leer with the support of our colleagues in Spain. Of course, it's a bit strange to have this event hosting from the Netherlands as the melons are in Spain, but we are happy to do so from our brand new studio here in the Netherlands. And we have been had already a busy week for the melons. A lot of customers visiting the fields in Spain. Yesterday there was an interesting webinar hosted from our colleagues in Spain, and the day before yesterday we had some digital crop talks. My name is Jan Doldersum, Manager Chain and Retail, and I will be the host and the moderator for the discussion. We have made I believe, an interesting program for you, and let's have a look at that. So yesterday I already mentioned we had the webinar on what is the market telling us, with some insights from Kantar, Europanel. But today we will focus on inspiring the consumer of the future. And we have three, I believe, top speakers organized for you. The first one is from IGG, John Wright. The second one is Mike Knowles from Eurofruit. And the third one is Beatriz from Kilometer Zero. And I will, of course, further introduce those speakers to you later today. But maybe this setting of WebEx is new for you. So we prepared a small video to explain the WebEx. And also we organized a simultaneous translation into Spanish. And there is a separate breakout group organized for the Spanish speakers. So you can, in this video we explain to you how you can go out of this room for the English version, and you can go to the simultaneous Spanish translation. And we will also explain in this video how you can chat if you have any questions. You can of course interact. We would like to have to answer your questions if possible. And so we have a very interactive session. So my colleagues in Spain, you can start the explanation video. Okay, hopefully that is clear for everyone. Indeed, you can put the screen on the focus modus, and so you can literally see all the speakers in the view you like. So you can focus, and I think the explanation is clear in the video. So let's move to the first speaker. That is John Wright, and John is the head of the EMEA Insight. John joined IGG's retail team in June 2012, following nearly 10 years of working within the retail research arena. He leads the research into markets in Western Europe, the Middle East and Africa. John undertakes regular market visits across Europe, the Middle East and Africa, tracking the latest format, private label, marketing and digital engagement strategies, meeting retailers and suppliers to further develop IGG's international program. John, I hope you are there. You can put on unmute, and I would like to invite you to present the IGD presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. So I will start sharing my presentation, and hopefully the technology will all work. But as I do that, I'd like to thank you for inviting me this afternoon to come and speak and present about our global retail outlook and what we think the grocery retailing market will look like in a post-pandemic world. So what is it going to look like after we've exited COVID? So yes, my introduction was the fact that I traveled regularly. I wish that was true recently, certainly, but it will be something that we're going to get back to very soon, hopefully, and I will be able to get out and travel the world and see grocery retailing again in across those markets that were set out. So yes, as explained, I head up the European team, so look at European retailing, and then my colleagues will go out and travel around all over the world, North America, all the way through to Australia and Asia, all the way down into Latin America. So we take a very global viewpoint on grocery retailing, and hopefully some of that will come across in the presentation that I give you today. In terms of who IGD are, we are an organization of two parts. I sit on the left-hand side of this slide in the commercial insight division, and we generate revenue and profit that then flows through into the social impact. And there are a lot of freely available information that we produce on things like healthy diets, the impact of road miles, the transition the UK and Europe are trying to do around sustainability, and inspiration about how companies here in the UK are trying to change and to evolve and improve themselves. So ultimately, as an organization, we're a not-for-profit organization, and we're working together to drive change that makes a tangible difference for society, business, and the individual. So that sets out, so hopefully who I am, who IGD are, and why I'm here to speak today is around looking at broadly just two things. I'm going to look at lots of things, but essentially it boils down to two things only. And that's the sort of economic outlook that we have set out for the grocery retail market on a global basis. And then I'm going to dive down and look at a few countries. And then I'm going to look at how that's going to impact on shoppers as well. So if you've got any questions, do please put them in the chat bar, and I'll look forward to answering them at the end. There's lots of information that we have that's additional to this about specific countries or specific retailers that I'm not going to be able to get into given the time I have. But if there's other information that you would like, then please do come back to me. My contact details are on the presentation, and I'll be happy to answer emails and questions either today or afterwards if you see this on a video or recording later. So looking at our forecasts really up to 2022 and the impact that we are forecasting that COVID has had on a global grocery level. So this isn't your category we're looking at, this is the total spending of all the money that goes into hypermarkets, supermarkets, convenience stores, independent mom and pop stores, discounters, and online as well. And as you can see, up to 2019, we were obviously forecasting and showing the same sort of growth. But what we saw in 2020 was that big spike in growth for the grocery retail industry. Sales got up to about 5% at a global on a global basis. So much higher than it was the year before, but I guess not as good as just above 2017, sorry. But certainly was outpacing our forecast that we'd made the year before for 2020, which was only at 2.2%. Now, what 2020 has done, obviously, is bring a lot of spending into the grocery retailing market and out of other areas, be it restaurants and sort of commercial and consumer food service divisions. And obviously, very few of us are in the office or being able to go out, depending on our lockdown measures. And therefore, this is going to slowly unwind this year. And we're going to see that sort of drop back back to 2.8% growth for 2021. Now, we always have to bear in mind that while that looks slightly disappointing versus 2020's figure. This is obviously on top of the figure that we already have. So this is incremental growth that we're forecasting for the global grocery industry market. And therefore you can see quite how much of the gains we expect most countries to hold on to in the short term before playing out into 2022, where we're nearly back to where we were in our pre-COVID forecasts. So 2020, 2021, 2021 is going to be certainly challenging and interesting, and then 2022, a little bit back to normal on a global basis. However, not every market really, though, we're expecting to be the same or certainly perform the same. And so we're going to see a lot of variation up to 2022. And so these are compound annual growth rates for the various markets that I'm showing on the slide. And so you can see the fastest growing up here in the top left-hand corner in India, through to actually Spain and Italy, where we're forecasting small contractions at a total grocery level as shoppers pull back on their spending and come back from the high level of spending that we saw in 2020. So you can see here there's going to be a lot of competition coming onto the market in some of these countries in the middle of this chart. So the UK, Germany, France, the US, and then Spain and Italy as well. So the grocery retailing markets that we're forecasting here are going to become a little bit more challenged as retailers have to sort of compete so much more forcefully than they did do and had to before. One thing I would highlight is that these figures include inflation. So that is why the UK is probably a little bit higher than the rest of Europe, because we're expecting higher levels of inflation here in the UK. In terms of volume growth, we're expecting it to be very similar to the rest of Europe, but inflation to drive the overall size of the market and create that challenge. But you can see here, great variation. And so depending on the country that you're exporting into or you're working in, there's going to be a very different story around what the grocery market will do and what you may have to do as a producer to expand in that market. If we look at the channels, so where the product's being sold and how they're going to grow, really the pandemic has brought about an accelerated shift in where shoppers are buying the products. Now, again, this is at a total grocery level. This is not melons, I'm afraid, or watermelons. This is at a total food level. So this is where everybody is buying all their food. And in the US, you can see really that it's caused this shift away from superstores, supermarkets like Walmart and Kroger, into smaller convenience stores, discounters, Aldi and Lidl, as ever, growing within this market, just as they are here in Europe. And then online being the real strong growth engine. You can see 11% annually between 2020 and 2022. If we bring that a little bit closer to home, you can see that the same sort of patterns play out here in Europe, although it's subtly different in terms of the impact that the pandemic is expected to have. And you can see while there's going to be faster growth again at the discounters and online, and to a degree within convenience, the strong supermarket channel that exists in Europe, we're expecting to remain in the same sort of place. So the Albert Heijns, the Intermarchés, the Delhaises of this world, Tesco's here in the UK, whose core format is the supermarket, we're expecting to remain pretty strong in this way. And the way you can read this chart is depending on how and who you work with, really. This could be a story that discount is set to win in terms of the strong growth you can see that the chart shows. The other way is that you can see that the other retailers, the multi-channel retailers, the Carrefours, the Ravers, the Edekas of this world, actually are going to do pretty well out of this, really, in the scheme of things. the slower growth that they may see through the hypermarkets and the supermarket is going to be offset by online growth and convenience store growth and the continued strength of supermarkets. So depending on the story you want to tell and who you work with, I think there's something in this story for everyone here as you expect it. But one thing that the pandemic has definitely done is affect retailer margins and put these under pressure even more than they did before. So they've seen, from a retail perspective, great top line sales growth, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's flowed through to the bottom line and to make it profitable growth. A lot of cost has come into the business through having to add plexiglass shields, invest in stores, make them COVID safe, has caused profitability to be affected. And that was even before we bring in the idea of competition from the likes of Aldi and Lidl and other discounters, or Mercadona or Colruyt, who will continuously cut prices to remain competitive. And as you can see here, the operating margins for 3 global large-scale retailers over the last 10 years has fallen pretty dramatically for Walmart and Tesco, where we have the information. And although Carrefour's has improved, we're still talking about margins at about 2.3%. And this is going to be creating this challenging operating environment that retailers are going to have to work in as they continue to invest in their stores and make them even better and more attractive for shoppers. So this profitability challenge will be something that a lot of retailers have to deal with. And then as we look at it from the economic recovery point of view, so the backdrop that shoppers will be living in, basically, what we're expecting for many sort of northern hemisphere countries, so North America, Europe, Australasia, is this idea of what we're calling a K-shaped recovery. So those people who kept their jobs during the pandemic, being able to work from home, they may have actually saved money because they're not commuting or going to the office. They've done relatively well out of the pandemic, though they're emerged slightly more unscathed. And so they're the top part of the capital K. There are obviously a whole set of people who have been very much more impacted by the pandemic. They've lost their jobs, they've been made redundant, or they've not been able to be paid due to the working environments and the restrictions that are being put in place. So it's not going to be an even economic recovery. And for retailers, this is going to create an interesting challenge in the fact that they're going to have to try to continue to market to both sides of this shopper base, those people who still have money and have done okay, and those people who are going to be struggling and looking for value and looking for ways to save money. So this K-shaped recovery is really going to set high-income shoppers against low-income shoppers, those people who've been able to save versus those who haven't. And we've seen in a lot of countries, actually, the older shopper who usually falls into the top two parts, the savers and the high-income consumers, actually are going to come out of it slightly better than younger shoppers. So this is, again, sort of the areas that retailers are going to have to contend with. And then as I look across in terms of the retailers, how it's going to continue to put pressure on margins. COVID isn't going away, so there's still going to be costs involved there. There's going to be more channel evolution and changes in where channels are, and also, therefore, how lower profits are going to come into the market as well. And this is going to flow through also into the channels of where people are. They're going to be buying a little bit more online, discount, and as we've seen from the graphs, proximity or convenience stores as well. So as we look forward and think about those challenges and how it's affecting shopper behavior at the moment, in terms of when we've spoken to shoppers, I think there's sort of 5 areas that come out really. And they're the ideas of some are looking to save money. They are going to think in a post-COVID world more about their health and where they buy and what they buy. The online shopper is going to be more demanding. there's going to be more focus on sustainability. And as you can see within this, there's going to be quite a wide range of changes with shoppers' buying habits as well. And we think about that from retailers and suppliers' points of view. It's whether or not these are challenges or opportunities. And when we think about them, you know, there are differences. From a retailer standpoint, the saving money is a challenge. From suppliers, it could be a bit mixed depending on the product and the way or what you're trying to sell. Obviously, it's a really big opportunity, this idea of the increased focus on health, because health is a very individual point of view and decision. And so there's lots of different things that people can take away from it. Online is a challenge, and I think that is the case for everybody. And as you can see from the last two, sustainability and the evolving shopper really is both a challenge, but also an opportunity, and about how you want to approach it as a manufacturer and a supplier, and how you meet different shopper needs. First of all, I'm going to look at a few challenges really that we see coming through into the to the European and global grocery retailing market. And the first one is the fact that everyday low pricing is becoming more prevalent. We're seeing it across a greater number of countries, and we're seeing it across a greater number of products. And so here in the UK, we were historically a very traditionally promotional market. People would buy on promotion quite a lot. Retailers would use it to drive footfall, encourage people into store, and drive excitement. And actually, at the moment, we're going through quite a change away from promotion and towards everyday low pricing, and it's created quite a shock in our market. For shoppers, though, it's great in terms of the savings that it's providing. And as you can see from the photographs on the left-hand side in the UK, and this example on the right-hand side from Albert Heijn in the Netherlands, fresh in general is a product category that retailers are using as a way to drive price perception. So things like bananas that people know the price of, that drive and affect the price perception of the retailer overall, are being used to attract shoppers. And so everyday low pricing is even coming into fresh as well. And it's not just on everyday low price. So promotions or price cuts are also being used within fresh. So on the left-hand side, this is from a hypermarket in China. And as you can see, watermelons being used and savings being used on there to really sort of drive footfall and encouragement within this area, but fresh more widely as a category. So this is Supeco on the right-hand side in Spain, and really strong pricing messages being used from the front of the store in a key footfall driving category to encourage shoppers and bring shoppers into store. Another challenge really is around sustainability and how that affects packaging. So this photograph on the left-hand side is of an independent retailer really here in the UK. But as you can see, the sort of count that they run is how many products they have that are now packaging free or plastic free really. Now, while it's a great message to be promoting from the retailer standpoint, obviously that puts a pressure on supply chains, getting products that look good and meet the quality standards that you would expect and hope for, and that shoppers want as well. So there's a definite challenge there. And as you can see here on the right-hand side, pre-prepared or half-cut melons, but again, then wrapped in plastic. Again, how do shoppers or how will shoppers think about these things in future will be a key question that all suppliers and manufacturers will have to think about and see if there's a different solution out there that they can bring out. We've done a lot of studies into the margin basically left by online. And as you can see here in this example of a product that's done, the product's picked in store and then delivered to shoppers. And as you can see, versus the standard model and margin that somebody has when they just go into store, pick up the product and pay for it, we think it's about 8.2% down really against that model. So you can see the impact that online and its growth, while it is very attractive and it's bringing new shoppers in potentially, margin-wise and profitability-wise is having a huge impact on pricing as well. And this is another area where packaging is becoming a bit more questioned and a bit more challenged. So how does online deliveries be made safe? How does the product turn up and look as good as it's expected to from a shopper's point of view, or certainly how you want it to, but not be in plastic packaging or packaging that shoppers feel is superfluous. So this is an example from the Netherlands, from Picnic. They are a pure e-commerce player. They only operate online. And they've started to say that they are going to think about online first packaging. So how does packaging work only in an online environment? It doesn't have to look great for it to sit on a shelf, because there is no shelf. The shelf is the online portal. As long as it looks good on there, when it actually gets delivered, how can they deliver it well, but use as little packaging as possible? So it's going to be a really interesting retailer to keep an eye on and think about and see how they develop packaging that meets that online need. And then one of the other things that's really seen an acceleration during the pandemic is quick commerce. So people delivering things on bike, basically. And we've seen this be a real strong growth engine in Latin America and in Asia, but it's certainly coming to Europe and North America at the moment, about people buying something and getting it delivered within 15 minutes, half an hour at most. So really quick, people making decisions about what they need and getting it very quickly. And this is expanding out from just general restaurant food into getting these specific products. And so this is an example on the right-hand side of watermelons being able to be delivered within 1 hour of somebody buying it. So again, the impact on supply chains, making sure stores have product and it can actually get from the store to the shopper in a quality and standard that you would want, is going to be really interesting and a bit of a challenge around the packaging as well. But luckily, it's not all just about challenges. There are quite a few positive rays of light, I think, out there at the moment. And the first one is the fact that retailers are realizing more and more what enables them to stand out from their competitors, be it Aldi and Lidl here in Europe, or from sort of price-focused companies elsewhere. And fresh is one of those products, and ranging that, merchandising it, and making it really as attractive as possible in store is becoming a bigger and bigger portion of what retailers are trying to do. And I think, when I started to look at this presentation, some of the photos I saw was just fantastic, but examples from Brazil and from Thailand about retailers really celebrating the fresh product that they are selling and really sort of maximizing that with the producers who produce these goods and bringing that to life in store and telling the story online as well. Within organic, again, this is another area which is sort of really emerging and developing very, very quickly. We're seeing shop-in-shop style solutions from France and the French retailers. This is Carrefour on the left-hand side here. And you can see just how much space, how much money it's invested in this organic part of its store. And it really brings that to life. And for the organic shopper who goes into that area, it's got fresh, it's got all the different sort of categories, be it chilled or frozen or everything else. And so really maximizes that organic opportunity. And again, on the right-hand side, bringing it to life online. So this is Ocado, and they have an organic shop within the Ocado website, really. And what they do here is they just superimpose on the picture, actually, the the stickers, they don't have them on every melon, so they don't go through, but they can just do it because it's an online store. So again, sort of showing that organic and activating that is much easier online. And certainly after a year where we spent a lot of time at home cooking the same meals or eating the same sort of food, shoppers are really looking for inspiration, and retailers are coming up with new solutions about how to do that. This one on the left-hand side is from a Canadian retailer, and I think it's just a great example of where they've thought about how they can inspire shoppers to cook different meals. And so they can see they brought together fresh products with the actual protein, with olive oil that the shopper would need to cook it, and they've given you the recipe card that goes with it. And these change on a weekly basis and really inspire shoppers to try something different. So really interesting to see how that goes. And then bringing it across onto the right-hand side here, and the idea that some people may not want to cut the product or necessarily feel like they can or have the confidence around this. And this is an Australian retailer, Coles, who will actually, as it says here, cut it for you. So fresh product, cut for you in store to enable you to enjoy it at home straight away. And that inspiration is not just in store, it's really coming to life online. And so in terms of recipe information, which increasingly shoppers are using both to sort of support new inspiration or to try and live healthily, again, is coming through online as well. And we're seeing the use of apps or digital carts, which have tablets on the trolleys, on the chariots, inspiring shoppers to try different recipes or buy different products or try something new. So this general digitization of people's shopping patterns and shopper journeys is going to encourage them to try different things as well. And where you can support retailers to promote your products and show different recipes, I think really puts you closer to the shopper and enables your products to get a little bit better visibility from shoppers in general. And then one of the key things, obviously, is that retailers are being looked to by shoppers to help them live healthily. And so retailers are having to support health-focused messaging. And so these are just two very recent examples, one from Sweden, where ICA has made it a commitment to help shoppers live a more healthy lifestyle. And on the right-hand side here, Tesco in the UK, who have shown people how they can swap certain products for healthier alternatives. And fresh is a big portion of this. And again, just showing the benefits of switching one product for another is something that I think is really going to grow in importance, and also enable different products or different produce to be highlighted to shoppers by enabling them to show other benefits as well. And one of those areas is really around convenience. And so pre-cut, so we've seen in the example of Coles who will cut it for you, but obviously pre-cut fruit and vegetables, again, changes how shoppers potentially perceive the product or how quickly they use it. So rather than saving it for the weekend, because it's pre-cut, they may use it that evening or that day. And again, then buy more of that product as well. So thinking about how to provide convenience is very, very key. And taking it a step further is making fresh and making a wider range of products a snacking option. One thing we have definitely seen during the pandemic is people working from home are eating more often and more regularly throughout the day. And while this has been a benefit to things like usual snacking products, obviously where we can change the perception of what the product is and make fresh, make watermelon and melon a snacking option for shoppers, and do that through pre-preparation, as you can see here on the right-hand side, or package it in a slightly different way that makes it easy to carry on the left-hand side here from Ireland. All those sorts of things help the shopper and change the perception of the product overall. So again, just trying to think about how shoppers are approaching your product is really, really key. While I focus mainly throughout the presentation on retailing, obviously there is the opportunity as markets open back up again and restaurants reopen, that spending will come back into food service. People do want to get out. They do want to get back to restaurants. They do want to get back to their pre-pandemic lifestyles. And one market where we've forecasted the growth of food services here in the UK, and as you can see, we're expecting food service, so restaurants and eating out and dining out, is expected to grow by 12% this year, and back to account for nearly a third of the overall eating market here in the UK. So not quite back to its pre-pandemic levels. We don't think that's going to happen until about 2023. But in terms of it, it's still a great opportunity. You know, it's not something to be ignored just because the focus is on retail at the moment, not to think about the opportunities in restaurants and eating out as well. Because we're still seeing lots of different examples of retailers and different companies opening restaurants throughout the pandemic. And here in the UK, we've had an Eataly open in London, and the queue to go and visit it and go and see it, you know, it caused such excitement and interest. And again, this was all about getting back to that normality and that different lifestyle and eating out. And certainly retailers adding food service into their stores is going to be key moving forward as well. So Edeka here on the right-hand side in Germany, adding a gourmet restaurant into one of its stores. And then one of the great things I love about my job is the fact that when I start to look into different categories and everything else is how people use different categories in different ways. And this was a promotion only done a couple of weeks ago from a US retailer who used melons as a way to try, watermelons as a way to try and break a world record to have the world's largest watermelon display. So, you know, in terms of it, there's so many different ways that retailers are looking to use the products at the moment. And I think, you know, there's so many different opportunities. So thank you so much for your time. I think I've got 4 sort of key messages I wanted to land with you. That the short term is this idea of a K-shaped recovery, which will mean that there will be both opportunities to get people to trade up, try different things, but there will be challenges because pricing will become more of a focus for retailers. There will be things from working from home, which will help retailers and retailing more widely, and it creates new opportunities around snacking and around trying to drive on-demand solutions, you know, with that sort of idea of people on bikes, basically. There's a challenge in the fact that sort of high-margin consumer food service will return, but it's going to be slow. It's going to be something we have to wait for, and so you have to sort of think about how and when that margin comes back in. But I think for a market like yours, you know, the long-term positivity of fresh in general and certain products totally remains. Retailers, suppliers are going to continue to have to invest in meeting shoppers' demands for health and obviously sustainability. And I think fresh and your products definitely plays into that space. So thank you very much for your time and for listening to me. I don't know if I have any questions, but if I do, I would love to take them now.
Yes, thank you, John, for this very interesting insights. Really good to see not only the challenges, but also the opportunities. So thanks for that. We received quite a number of questions. So maybe to start with the first one from Jose Antonio Guterres. He is asking, it seems that consumers will prefer to shop at discount supermarkets in order to spend less money. So the question, I believe, is why are, so we see it in your channel overview, the increase in the discounters. So what is the exact reason for consumers to buy at discounters? So is it only the price, or what do you believe is the reason?
Price used to be the reason, and it will be for some shoppers. You can never get away from price. Let's be honest. The price will always be an overarching region for some shoppers. But even the likes of Aldi and Lidl now, the way that they're developing is towards better stores, better product. There's a greater range of organic health and wellness focused product coming into stores. So they are looking to try and change their perception. And one of my colleagues said that he had a meeting with Lidl here in the UK, and they got angry when we described them as a discounter because they said that they were just a price-focused supermarket. And I think while price will remain important, product and quality of that product is actually more important coming through. And so they're still looking for innovation, supporting local producers, especially within fresh. And trying to attract some new shoppers into their stores.
Yeah, and another question from Jose Antonio. Of course, you presented a lot of insights in terms of the retail market, but you also showed the recovery of plus 12% for the food service. So how can we even further stimulate this? So what can we do to stimulate the consumption in restaurants and bars, and especially then for the melon category and watermelon?
Yeah, I think that when we talk to shoppers, certainly in the UK, it's around concerns around safety. That's the funnily enough the most overriding factor. So there's a bit that's out of your control because it'll be with the restaurant owners. I think when it comes to where you can help it is around packaging or making the product safe, or conveying that message to shoppers, to consumers, such that there isn't that concern. So I think it's about working with restaurant chains, working with wholesalers if you have intermediaries between you and the restaurant owners who can work with restaurateurs to promote that safety message, then that's really, really key.
Yeah, and a question from Amalio da Rio. Thank you, Amalia. Do you think that traditional supermarkets will catch up with the discount supermarkets in terms of price reduction? So I think they are the price setters. So what will be the response of the traditional retailers?
I think what a lot of retailers don't want to get into, but what we're sort of heading towards is elements of a price war, really. But I think we need to be careful. From an industry level, there will be competition on price because people want to get people into store. That doesn't necessarily mean that that'll affect your category. I don't see it being a price, watermelon or melons being that sort of price leader. For the UK, for quite a lot of European countries, it's about milk, it's about banana, it's about those everyday products that bring people into store. That's where the competitive element around sort of really driving prices lower and lower will always be. I think your category sits in that other area of differentiation about how they'll stand out, how mainstream supermarket chains will look to compete against the discounters and show something different.
Yeah. And in terms of this sustainability aspect, I think you described very well in your presentation on the opportunities and convenience. I think that is a clear chance and opportunity for the both the melon and watermelon category. But in terms of sustainability, I assume that also the impact on the pricing will also affect how retail will be responding to this. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge at the moment, and who picks up the cost of sustainability is something that we haven't worked out. I think there's various steps. I think one of the overarching things as producers that you can bring to the market is the idea of storytelling. So where does your product come from? How are you producing it? And showing that to shoppers. And there is an education piece for shoppers in terms of actually understanding you can't just have cheap food anymore. There has to be an element of, if we're going to do this sustainably and we're going to do it in a way that you expect us to be producing product nowadays, then there has to be a shift in pricing perception as well. And I think there is an education bit that retailers and producers will have to do with shoppers. And I think, anything you can be doing as an industry to bring that through and marketing that it's a great product, but it comes not at a negative cost because of what it is or it's expensive, but because we're doing so much to invest in sustainability, protection of the environment, protection of local communities and economies by supporting local and small manufacturers, then that's a story we have to tell as an industry and get, not encourage people to pay more because they have to, but because that is the part, that the role that they have to play in our shift towards sustainability.
Yeah. Maybe one last question. You mentioned already about communication, and I think one aspect is about the health aspect. Yesterday, my colleague Vincent also showed some nice examples on the melon and watermelon specifically, what it can bring to your health. So Amelia asking you, a study has been done in the UK which reveals that eating healthily is 3 times more expensive than eating unhealthy. Are you aware of that study? And are consumers, especially in this sensitive time of health concerns, are they willing to pay more for a healthy lifestyle?
I think because we're in the UK, we're going through a shift towards, we're bringing in legislation actually called high fat, salt and sugar legislation that's meant to drive down promotions and remove promotions from those products really. So there is an element of perception that healthy products are more expensive, but that's mainly because promotions sit more within the unhealthy or less healthy products that exist in stores. So yes, I think there is an element of that, but I think a lot of it's to do with price perception and the fact that, as I say, promotions sit in that part of the store and not necessarily always within fresh. Are people happy to pay for it? Yes. Our shopper research shows that people who are thinking ever more about their diet and that whole idea of holistic health, not just necessarily living a healthy way, but what other benefits do products bring? And in a different presentation, I've got examples of where manufacturers are showing those health benefits in signage in the store and showing shoppers what it does, and not just being about the product. It's healthy. It's actually what benefits does it bring? What vitamins does it contain? How does that help lower sugar, help with heart health, etc., etc. So, and I think if we sell and market the benefits of the product rather than just the product itself, then shoppers understand why they have to pay that little bit more for it. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, John. Due to the time, we need to continue. Excellent. Normally we would get an applaud from the audience. Can't do that, but thank you so much. I'm sure the delegates appreciated your contribution. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's continue with the second speaker. Mike, it's your turn. Mike Knowles is Editorial Director for Europe at Fruit Media International, the leading publisher and event organizer for the international fresh produce business. An accomplished multimedia journalist and presenter, he's also editor of Fruitnet's flagship European title, the Fruitnet Eurofruit magazine. So normally it's the other way around. It's Mike is introducing me, but now I'm proud to present Mike. He's a son of a retail buyer, that's new for me, and the grandson of a grocer. And Mike joined the Fruitnet group in 2002 from The Times, where he worked as a sub-editor. Over the past 2 decades, he has become one of the world's leading expert commentators on the international fresh produce trade. Mike speaks fluently Italian and has traveled to every continent with Fruitnet, meeting and interviewing key players across the world of fruit and veg. And he also has helped to produce several of the top industries events like the World of Fresh Ideas, the Asia Fruit Congress, and many more. Mike, can I invite you to present your fresh start or fresh restart?
Of course you can. Thanks for having me, Jan. It's really a great pleasure to be involved in your event. And as you say, we say the boot is on the other foot. So you're introducing me, and thank you for being part of our events in the past. Let me just share my screen and make sure that my presentation comes up. I hope you can all see that. As Jan has said, I'm Mike Knowles. I work for Fruitnet Media International, and one of the things that we do, not just in February when it's cold, not just in September when people go to Hong Kong if they can, but we work for Fruit Logistica all through the year as a media partner. And really the intention is that the trade fair and the publisher give people really good information, give them information about the fruit and veg business that they can use and help grow their business. So one of the things that involves is publishing an annual trend report. And I've been invited today to talk about some of the major findings of this year's report, which was entitled A Fresh Start. And the question mark is what all good publishers do if they're not quite sure. They want to hedge their bets. Will we get a fresh start? No one really knows, but that's certainly what everyone wants. So we're looking at the long-term effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the international fruit and veg business. And important to say, this is free information. Many publishers these days give free information away because they're driven by advertising or by support from sponsors. You guys benefit here because you get a free copy of this trend report. And in fact, you can download any previous trend reports, 4 or 5 years worth, and there's lots of good information there for you. So just go to the Fruit Logistica website. So, assuming you guys, like me, are all slightly in shock about what's been happening over the past 18 months, it's been like no other time in our lives, and so much of what we took for granted before is destined never to be the same again. And the big question for us at Fruitnet is this: will the dramatic changes we have seen in the fresh produce business since early 2020 translate into long-term or even permanent changes? And that was the aim of our trend report this time around. First, if I may, I'm just going to remind myself, yourselves, about what the pandemic's big effects were. And we've heard some of that from John's fantastic presentation that started us off. But just to recap, we saw changing channels, shifts in the food service arena and retail. And in the meantime, we've seen massive growth in supermarket sales and a definite trend towards more online shopping. This is a photo taken at a brand new distribution center opened by Jumbo in the Netherlands, and it was created specifically to fulfill online orders. We've seen supply disruption as well. The pandemic also has led to problems in terms of transport networks, as well as labor supply, because people couldn't move around so easily. And the people we spoke to when researching our report suggested this is a challenge that won't disappear anytime soon. And then, of course, remote working. We all know the story here. Many of us are currently at home in our spare bedrooms or at kitchen tables. And for many of us, this has changed the way we eat and consume food. And the big question, of course, is how many days will we spend in our offices in future if the offices are still there? Our friends at Rabobank have suggested that even if people stay at home one more day a week than they used to on average, then this will have a significant effect on the kind of foods that they buy. So as a result, there have been some immediate impacts on the fresh produce trade. There's been a downturn in many respects in demand for convenience products like salads and chopped fruit, although that's not across the board. There has been greater demand for items with longer shelf life, especially when you consider people have been shopping less frequently, but buying in greater volume when they do so. The trend towards products which keep for longer, apples, pears, potatoes, does make sense. We spoke recently to the head buyer from UK chain Marks and Spencer, the head produce buyer, and she revealed that one of their best-selling products in 2020 was a 2-kilo bag of potatoes. That's a surprise for that kind of high-end retailer. They usually outperform the market on premium and convenience items, a lot of urban stores, so lunchtime products like salads and sandwiches, fresh cut fruit, berries, and so on. So the fact people were buying more potatoes in bulk, which requires preparation at home, that tells us something. And that leads on to the fact that scratch cooking was more prevalent over the past year. And I think we all know why that was. So where are we now? Once these shocks to the system have eased, where does the whole pandemic experience leave the fresh produce business? And that's the question we asked lots of people in the business over the past 18 months. We spoke to hundreds of people in order to produce this report to ensure that we knew which way the wind was blowing in the industry. And what we concluded was that the headline answer is there is a golden opportunity. There is really greater demand. Sorry, just a moment. I have a notification come up. A greater demand and appreciation for fresh fruit and vegetables, but the demands on suppliers and distributors are also bigger than they were before. In our report, we talk about this idea that the market development and the trends we saw before the pandemic have accelerated. The pandemic hasn't necessarily created brand new trends in fruit and vegetables, but it has made some of them far more important than they might otherwise have been. And we think some of these will continue in the coming years. So let's take a look at some of these lasting trends. The first relates to why consumers could eat more fruit and vegetables. Consumers in many markets of the world have shown much more interest in healthy eating since the pandemic began. Fresh fruit and vegetables, alongside other food groups like grains and pulses, now have some very strong institutional support, like from organizations like the WHO, the United Nations, and many of you will know, I'm sure, that this is the UN Food and Agriculture Organization's International Year of Fruits and Vegetables. And when it comes to their perceived importance to human health, our industry's products are very much in the right place at the right time. And as our report shows, and John has also touched on this, retailers are reacting. This is being seen. They have noted this shift in demand among consumers. The UK's second largest food retailer, Sainsbury's, recently changed its primary message. It was a message that they had been running for 10 years, which was eat well for less. So a price proposition, really. And they've changed it to helping everyone eat better. And that word better is key because it's better for health, it's better for them, and also better for the environment. And like many retailers around the world, Sainsbury's is now using fruit and veg to convince consumers and shoppers that going to its stores is a way to live a healthier life. And John mentioned ICA as well there in Sweden. It just launched a healthy eating campaign. It's actually taken it upon itself. It's taken the responsibility to ensure that its customers will eat at least 500 grams of fruit and veg a day per person by 2025. We've also seen how important health has become to consumers in citrus. In Europe, sales were actually decreasing in 2019, and that was a trend that was probably over the last 4 or 5 years. But when the pandemic began, it sparked this interest in healthy vitamin C rich products. And so now those sales are growing. You can see how important health has become, and it explains why there's so much investor interest right now in citrus companies. As you can see from some of our headlines here, lots of interest in acquiring citrus companies. And more generally, that point about investment is an important one. The fresh fruit and veg business does face a number of logistical challenges, technical challenges at the moment, but it's also an industry that is attracting money. Just look at some of these stories also from our website, fruitnet.com, and you can see what I mean. So let's look at another lasting trend. In our report, we expect that the online retailing trend is going to continue. Now, the rise of online retailing and e-commerce over the past year has grabbed a lot of the headlines, and understandably so, because the growth rates have been incredible, very, very, very big. But we should remember that online does remain a relatively small part of that retail market. What is true, we think, from our research and from our report, is that online is affecting the rest of the market. So we're seeing a change of direction. We're seeing that people no longer regard supermarkets just as places to go and buy food, but as service providers that will bring that food to them. Just look at what Amazon Fresh is doing. Starting with this particular store in West London, it has opened its first stores in Europe, and as I'm sure you know, they make use of camera-based technology called Just Walk Out, which allows the shoppers to grab what they want and simply leave the store. Payment is all online via a smartphone app. And what this shows us is that online and the digitization of the retail process, it's opening people's eyes to the possibility of food coming to them instead of them going to food. And it's the same story with meal kits like HelloFresh or Gusto. These have also done great business over the last year. In their case, the food comes to you and you get a head start in terms of meal planning and sometimes even preparation as well. And takeaway services have thrived as well during lockdown. This has also changed how people think about home delivery. It now seems easier, more simple, more possible and more convenient than before. And that's why a startup like this one, Gorillas, is doing so well by offering to bring you your groceries within 10 minutes of ordering. Another lasting trend that we see in our report is one that will last beyond the pandemic, and that's making business more responsible and more sustainable. Businesses in the fresh produce industry are now being asked to supply more than just high quality products. They have to demonstrate that their supply chains protect all of the people involved and have a minimal, if not positive, impact on the environment. Here is German retailer Aldi making the point rather dramatically with a big mural on the side of a building in Germany. And it says, "We deserve freshness." And then underneath, we learn that the mural, the painting, has been created using paint that removes pollution from the air. And it's, of course, a PR stunt, it's a PR exercise. But the message is clear. The food we buy and the supermarkets we buy it from have to be sustainable. As well as the environment, there are signs that ethical trading is going to become even more important to consumers after the pandemic. These bananas are sourced from by Canadian company Equifruit, and it has just become the first company in North America, possibly in the world, I think, to convince one of its customers to increase the price of their bananas. So Longo's, the customer, has pushed the price up so that shoppers will pay the fair trade premium. This is actually unheard of in the banana business, and it could be a sign, I think, and we think, that people are becoming more willing to pay for sustainable products. And this project is also worth mentioning, CFAV. Lots of European companies are involved in this from the fruit and veg trade, and they recently agreed a joint strategy that will reduce carbon footprints, introduce new standards on water, and improve the wages paid to workers. And then, of course, there's packaging. These sustainability concerns mean that the type of packaging used for fruit and vegetables is becoming increasingly important to people. And all of these areas present big challenges that need addressing. And then there's this trend, which is more of an external factor, but a hugely important one. I've mentioned it already, and that's transport and logistics. When it comes to transportation of produce, higher costs and increasing disruption are going to put the business under greater pressure in the next few years. Labour supply is expected to remain limited, and the volume of fresh produce that can be transported around the world will also be under pressure. So what will be needed? How will the fresh produce business have to react? Those we spoke to for our report agreed that companies will have to find ways of working more quickly and more efficiently. This could mean investing in technology or adapting the way that their people work, switching markets, or diversifying into new product areas. This is a big challenge in particular for suppliers. The costs involved in supplying products is increasing, but as we've heard, so too are the demands placed on them. Our report also finds that being closer to market could be an advantage in the next few years. I think that's why we're seeing so many investment dollars pouring into vertical or so-called urban farming. And that's why some retailers in particular are encouraging suppliers to establish production sources in their own home markets. It's something we've seen particularly in Russia. This is a tomato greenhouse supplying Magnet in Russia. Our report also underlines the importance of being more sustainable, an area we've just spoken about. And of course, sustainability is not really something you can achieve gradually over time. It's very much an in or out strategic decision. And I think it's important to remember that these pressures are being felt by everyone. And that's really a good thing, because all of your business partners, your suppliers, your customers have an interest in helping you to discover new opportunities and overcome the challenges that they see. So what else will be needed? Well, more than likely, a large amount of industry consolidation too. People in the business expect a lot more so-called M&A activity, mergers and acquisitions, in the next few years. And obviously, this kind of thing happens for different reasons, but the trends we've talked about, the need for greater sustainability, greater efficiency, faster supply and closer supply, all suggest that consolidation, vertical integration will be required. And you can see that in these stories here. And this is especially true when it comes to logistics. We're seeing a lot of logistics consolidation happening as well. One final thought, and that's about the supermarkets themselves. And John touched on this in his excellent presentation. As the pandemic fades, we hope, many of them will be thinking about how to convince more shoppers to return to their stores. One of the main conclusions of our report is that fresh fruit and vegetables are going to play that central role in consumers' lives going forward. So we can only assume that fruit and veg will be at the heart of what the retailers are doing as well in the coming years. And there are signs that this is happening already. This is Raver's new supermarket of the future concept in Wiesbaden. It opened just at the end of May. And we're told that this is Europe's first supermarket with a farm on its roof. Up there, it can apparently grow 800,000 pesticide-free basil plants every year. And what's more, these are fertilized entirely by fish that are farmed on the same site. And those plants are then sold in the store below. And you can even see the farm just at the top there from the fresh produce department. So let's finish with a few thoughts. It's true that we are all looking for some more permanence in our lives after the past year. So going forward, what permanent features can we expect in the fresh produce business? Well, our report says that certainly technology is going to play a big part. And healthy eating is going to be something that consumers look for more and more. Many of them will actively tell people about their healthy lifestyles, which is good news in marketing terms for fruit and veg companies. But there will be storms ahead as well, which must be on your radar. Firstly, the economy. The economy needs to recover from what it has spent on the pandemic, and that's going to put lots of pressure on all parts of the supply chain. And there is potential for trade tensions to disrupt business in certain markets. We're already seeing this with Brexit in the UK, and we've seen it with the blockade in Russia. If the pandemic has taught us nothing else, it should be this: take nothing for granted. Thank you all very much for listening.
thanks, Mike. Well done. I think a very good summary of what's happening in the last 1.5 years, and also give some future direction. Well, the chat is open for questions from the audience. Well, I wrote down some questions already to start with, Mike. You mentioned this consolidation, both industry and but maybe also even merger and acquisition from outside our industry. Where do you see the most impact will come from? So is it mergers, or is it really acquisitions from let's say from private equity or other companies?
I think if I had to choose between the two, it would be the latter. It would be investment from outside. I think we were seeing this even before the pandemic. I remember when we were organizing our Global Berry Congress, we were approached by somebody who was managing a fund on behalf of Bono and some of his friends, Bono, the singer from U2, and they were looking to invest in blueberries. They had targeted blueberries as a product that was, it had all the kind of key credentials. It had health, it had good sustainability. It was a product that was increasing in the market. So really, it's sometimes hard to tell. You look at what stories are in the news on a particular day, but I think investment from people who are looking for something more secure for their money, I think it's going to come from outside, and that's a really good thing for the fruit and veg business.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. And you mentioned also in one of your slides the central role of fruit and veg. So to differentiate from retailers and to get new momentum in the retail market. What would you advise to the watermelon growers and melon growers? How could they help this, and how could they benefit also from this?
Well, I think it's going to be very difficult. I think the market is going to be a hard one to supply, certainly in Europe over the next few years. But I do think there are opportunities. I think, what John says about the K-shaped recovery is exactly right. You may want to target that kind of renewed optimism in the market where fun and convenience and maybe products that have something extra, they're cut and pre-prepared, or they have something exciting about them. That's something you could potentially chase. And I think those market opportunities will return. But also, I mean, one of the comments that was in our trend report, which really stuck with me, was a comment from Ecuador and a supplier who was saying that actually it might just be a case of in the next few years just supplying a market without making a profit, with one eye on the far future, on 5-10 years time, and finding a way to efficiently kind of reserve your place in the market and wait for profitability to come back later on. I think the challenge of supplying discounters, or maybe they don't want to be called discounters, is going to be huge. But as John says, increasingly they will have a bigger share, and that might be worth keeping for later on.
Yeah. And can you confirm this? What already stated by John is this pressure on margin, and I think this will also in the end the squeeze or this pressure on suppliers. What's your feeling, and how came that out of your report?
Yeah, I think lots of companies are going to find themselves under huge pressure. I think one of the things that's going to characterize the next year is a kind of contraction in this opportunity overseas. So lots of European companies in the last decade have found that they can explore opportunities in Asia, in the Middle East, to diversify their markets. I think the growth there is going to slow. I don't think companies that supply China now, I think they will keep supplying China, and that will be okay. But actually, companies that haven't kind of got on that boat already are going to find it difficult to do so. So actually, they might need to invest in more premium ends of local markets, and that might be a way forward.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's a good positive ending, and I think yesterday we had already in a session hosted by my colleague Ricardo of Boyo and Jimbo that they also are focusing on taste and specialization and diversification. So I think there is some positive momentum at the melon industry. So that's a good part. I'd like to thank you, Mike, for your contribution, and I'm sure we will see soon each other one day live, hopefully. And
thanks very much, Jan.
Compliments to the contribution. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, then we continue with the third contributor. I do not know her personally, but I'd like to introduce to you Beatriz Jacoste Lozano, Director at Kilometer Zero of Food Innovation Hub. Beatriz is driven by a passion for creating a delicious and resilient food future for all. She works with companies, organizations and investors to push forward breakthrough solutions. She has traveled around the globe meeting food heroes, farmers, scientists, entrepreneurs and policymakers, transforming the way we eat. She has built food education programs to raise awareness in young generations. At Kilometer Zero Food Innovation Hub, she oversees the strategy of the organization and manages the relations with partners and global opinion leaders of the squad. Her area of expertise is business development, world-class industry network, partnership strategies, and a speaker. So I'd like to introduce you Beatriz. I hope you can hear me well, and I'd like to invite you to share your screen.
Hello, good afternoon. Do you hear me well?
I can hear you well. Excellent, excellent. So if you share your screen, or the floor is yours, Beatriz.
Thank you for the introduction. Okay. Do you see my screen correctly?
Yeah, you can
now?
see. Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me with you. I'm very excited to speak about this topic. I was listening very carefully to the previous speakers who outlined some of the biggest challenges we are facing. So to end today's session, I was hoping to bring you some optimism and also some best practices you can draw inspiration from, and hopefully innovate in your sector. So first of all, to share with you what we do at KM0 and how we have come up with these best practices, let me tell you more about what we do and who we are. So some years ago, some Spanish food industries, they thought they needed to be ahead of the curve and really understand where the food system was going. So we are not focused only in fruit and vegetable. We work along the whole value chain of food. And what we do is try to understand those challenges and map out those solutions to hopefully innovate at a faster speed, which is really needed nowadays. And as I mentioned, we work along the whole value chain of food. So we are analyzing and studying alternative proteins. What is the future of retail? Zero waste. How is technology playing a role in all of this? What are the transformations in the first part of the chain? So agriculture, biodiversity. How do we make and reformulate products so that they are tasty but still very healthy? How do we face the problem of clean water and also other related problems to sustainability? So how do we use less resources to produce the food we need for the growing population? And finally, how do we have a positive impact in the planet and people, as it was repeated today? So we work basically with 3 different types of agents. We work with startups, which is another name for entrepreneurs. So anyone who has a good idea, positive solution in the food sector, we try to support them through investment and also through mentoring. What we also do is open innovation. So we help companies, traditional big companies, to innovate by connecting them with these entrepreneurs that might have a solution, for example, in terms of traceability. You mentioned before that it was interesting for shoppers to see what the origin of a specific product is. So if there is a startup out there that can share this through a product, through a QR code, we can help that collaboration to occur, so that you don't have to develop in-house every technology, every solution. So that's what we like to say. The future is already out there. And what we are trying to do at KM0 is find those positive signals of innovations. And who do we do this with? So it's a very complex and deep challenge we are facing in the whole food system, and we cannot do this on our own. So we have brought on board 50 international thought leaders and business people, institutions, investors, and so on, working in the sector to help us understand what opportunities are there out there to innovate in the food system. So, for example, some of the people you see here who are part of our advisory board are the person who built with Obama the whole strategy against childhood obesity, and maybe you've heard of the vegetable garden in the White House. So he's part of our board. We also have the director of sustainability at Unilever, at Danone, many innovators working in the alternative protein sphere, also people bringing in solutions regarding reducing food waste and revaluing waste. So many of these people really inspire us to see that there are options out there, and we can have hope and we can transform our sector quicker. So us personally, as I said, we want to support entrepreneurs that are pushing forward solutions that are relevant for our sector. We have invested in 8 projects, but we support many more through our investors club and through other mechanisms. So, for example, one of the solutions we are helping at the moment is this one over here on the right side, Agro-Singularity. I'll speak about them a bit later on, but what they do is they revalue surplus into a type of powder that can be then used in the food industry. So this is, for example, also applicable to your businesses. And Trafable, for example, what they have is a blockchain technology to trace products along the whole supply chain, and they can also inform the consumer about the origin of a specific product. So since understanding this complex problem and this systematic change, it requires a lot of learning, and it's very deep problem that is multi-phased. We gather all of this knowledge in an annual report, which is called Fooderistic, in which we map out innovations and best practices along the whole value chain of food. So not only in the fruit industry, but also innovations in protein, zero waste, regenerative agriculture, and so on. You can also download it for free. And we also have other multimedia platforms such as podcast and so on. We also organize an annual summit, which is the most international summit here in Spain about the future of food. You're also invited to join, and this was just to give you some background on why we are entitled or capable of sharing with you how we see this future in a broader sense, so taking a step back and looking at it as a systematic approach and not just focus on our part of the value chain, on our part of our product, because everything will affect us, how the consumer is changing, how supply chains work, what is happening in agriculture, everything will define our own business. So this is why I'm inviting you with this presentation to take that step back and look at it as a broader sense. So in terms of encouraging you to do an outstanding job in what you're doing, Well, I believe our industry is the most impactful in the world, in our economy, in our health, in our identity. So it's a super beautiful sector to work in. But the reality is that we are facing huge challenges that we really have to talk about and not forget when we are operating in our sector. So we don't have to forget that many people are still hungry around the world. So how do we feed the increasing population is going to be one of the greatest challenges of our food system. How do we feed them and guarantee that access to food, but good quality food? Because as we are seeing, obesity rates and diet-related diseases are also becoming very important. Also in countries with traditionally healthy diets, for example, Spain, we are the 4th country in Europe with the largest rate of childhood obesity. So we really need to rethink what we are putting into our plate. And also, as you've talked today, the challenge of sustainability. How do we continue growing food without using so many resources and without destroying the planet? As we talked today, the pandemic has also added a layer of complexity to everything we have seen. So hunger, obesity, and sustainability are being enhanced and become even more difficult challenges because of the pandemic. So we are really trying to understand how to overcome all of these challenges. So to do this, I want to bring some hope to you so that we don't only see the big problems of the food system, but we start to identify what we can do and what others are doing around the world, because one of the main problems is that we have a lot of uncertainty. We can become hopeless if we don't get to know about solutions that are out there. But the reality is that there are many people, many innovators and companies trying to put forward solutions. So what I'm going to do is share with you a couple of highlights of some outstanding solutions that you can bring to your own sector to innovate and transform quickly. So in terms of agriculture, the first part of the value chain of food, we believe data science and understanding what is happening in our soil is going to be super important if we want to have better production. So I brought today this example, a company called Biome Makers. What they do is soil analysis. So we are encouraging farmers to make informed data-based decisions. We know the farming has become more and more techy, but it's still a very complex step that we need to take in the first part of the value chain. There are already some solutions that are making it very easy for farming to make those more informed decisions and to really understand soil productivity and monitor how it's working and what it needs in order to use less fertilizers, prevent diseases, and so on. So this is a very remarkable solution to look out to. Another curious solution out there is called desert control. So what they have developed is a liquid natural clay, which can turn desert sand into fertile soil in less than 7 hours. As you know, desertification is one of the main problems in the first part of the value chain of food. So how do we overcome this challenge without using more of the precious resource, which is water? So this solution, maybe it's not scalable to all parts of the world because it's devoted to more desertified areas, but it's interesting to know that we can recover soil and we can make it healthy again and usable. And more has been talked about CRISPR technology. Many of you have heard about the Nobel Prize that was given to the ladies who discovered this technology last year. So these molecular Caesars can edit DNA so that we can create crops that are much more resilient. We can even create crops that are healthier. So for example, golden rice in India was introduced to provide a rice that is enriched. So this gives us many possibilities in terms of really controlling our species, of really controlling what we are growing for the objectives we have in mind, which are making crops that are healthier and more sustainable. So we really have to look out to this technology, which is already very available. And we just need to make it accessible to the market and legalize it in Europe, but we are on the way. So in the beginning, I mentioned we have invested and supported this specific startup, which is already scaling up. And what they are doing is transforming non-valued products or surplus into ingredient solutions. So this signal is very interesting because we generate a lot of surplus, and we are talking about the tons of food waste that is being generated. So 1/3 of what is produced is thrown away, and it's thrown away with all the natural resources that go into producing it. So we really have to be more intelligent than what we are doing nowadays, and be able not only to reduce waste, but also to revalue waste. So how do we turn this surplus into something that is valuable and a high value product? So this company has transformed these surpluses into ingredient solutions. So I really recommend you to look into it. They have solutions for some products such as lemon, pumpkin, tomato, and so on. But why not have it with melon and watermelon? So in terms of manufacturing, the second part of the value chain of food, we are seeing a lot of innovations, many of them plant-based also, and applicable in the fruit sector. So I mentioned the large problem that food waste poses. So there are many technologies out there trying to combat this issue, but one of them is a peel technology. They produce and protect the fruit. So in this case, for example, avocado, with this layer they spray on top of the avocado. And this way they slow spoilage because the water can't be lost, right? So the fruit doesn't oxidate. So these types of technologies are going to become more and more interesting and more applicable into all of the food products. Another interesting solution we've seen in the market, in this case, it's a company based in Israel. What they are doing is transforming ugly fruit and veg into something beautiful and very sexy. So what we are seeing is that now we're raising awareness about the need to not waste food, but we really need to make it attractive for people to consume these types of products. So what Anina has done is create these ready meal capsules with ugly fruit and veg. So this also taps into the trend of ready meals. We are increasingly seeing more ready to cook meals than ready to eat. As we have more time, as mentioned, we are working more from home. We have more time, but we still don't want to spend too much time cooking. So these type of healthy ready meals are going to be more and more attractive because the frequency in which we will be eating these types of foods that are being delivered to us is going to increase. So for that reason, it can't only be hamburgers and pizzas and so on. So the type of food that we order in delivery or that we buy as a ready meal is going to have to be more healthy. In terms of packaging, we are seeing a lot of disruption and innovation. also because normatives and norms are becoming more strict in Europe in what regards plastic use and single plastic use. So it's more necessary than ever to have these alternative solutions to use. So Notpla is a company that has developed a material made from seaweed and plants, and it disappears naturally. So we can use this on our food product, and it would disappear in just a couple of weeks. In the same line, TIPA, they have developed a protective layer, and it decomposes back with no toxic residue. So what are we seeing? We see that these types of sustainable solutions are needed. On the other hand, their performance is not as good as conventional plastics. So this type of solution is very unique, and that's why TIPA is one of the startups that has received more investment, because they really replicate the characteristics and the use of plastic. Also, in terms of new product development, we are seeing that many plant-based solutions are coming up, but plant-based solutions have been out there for many years, but they weren't that good of a quality, right? So they weren't real alternatives because they weren't tasty, or their labels were super long, filled with unhealthy products. So we are seeing a revolution of plant-based products, which are now much better in terms of organoleptic characteristics. So for example, this company, Notco, you might have heard of Just in the US. Notco is based in Chile, but is present in the States. They have developed alternative products such as mayo, milk, hamburgers, and so on. But the interesting thing is that they have used an algorithm called Giuseppe. So this algorithm uses and mixes certain products, certain vegetables in certain quantities, so that it really replicates the real flavor of mayo or milk. So this is a very interesting signal in terms of seeing that we do need alternatives that are more sustainable, but they still will need to be healthy, and we need to reformulate them so that they are also tasty. So technology can be a very good ally in this sense. So in order to introduce a new product in the market, many of you might know that it's a very complex issue. Only 1 out of 10 products that are put into the market succeed. So in order to reduce the risk of failing in the market, this platform, TasteWise, is predicting food trends. So instead of using outdated reports to develop new products, we need real-time data, and we need to really understand what the consumer is doing in their homes. So this platform uses AI and understands all of the social media platforms and many other interactions and data points to predict those trends and those deep needs from consumers. And they give this information to producers and companies that want to develop new products. So it's a very interesting company to look into. So check it out, TasteWise. Okay, so coming to the end, because as you have seen, my presentation was very broad in terms of what the situation is in terms of challenges and opportunities in the whole food system, but how do we apply this to our specific markets? So coming back to the topic we mentioned before about sustainability, one of the main issues linked with this, also with the issue of hunger, is the fact that we are producing more than enough food for everyone in the world, but we are throwing away a large part of it. And as I said, it's a even larger problem because we are throwing away all of the resources that go into this. So how do we reduce the amount of food we are wasting? And also, how do we revalue food that would go to waste? So for example, with ugly fruits, we have seen so many examples in the past years that are aiming at selling them as an interesting product. So instead of making it just cheaper for you to eat an ugly carrot, how can I make it interesting for you to buy this product because you know you're contributing to a positive impact? So this is related to the examples I mentioned of agro-singularity, the powder that is made from food surplus and non-valued foods. And what they do is they transform it into this powder. And you have to know the food industry mainly works with powdered formed solutions. So this powder is then reintroduced into the value chain of food. Then we have Anina, the solution that I mentioned that is making it sexy to eat ugly fruit and veg through this ready meal. And then there are infinite examples of companies that are making juices, for example, or even boxes of ugly produce to re-educate the consumer, who is more and more willing to buy this product. And I believe we don't only have to re-educate the consumer, but also the retailer in that sense. But there are many steps being taken already. And in terms of preventing the food waste, we see interesting solutions with technologies or even super simple technologies such as a peel, which is in the end is a spray made from natural ingredients that prevents the oxidation coming out from the fruit. There are more examples. Polynatural is another one present in other countries of the world. So it's very important to take a look at this number of 40% of the fresh food produced is lost. So what do we do about this? The second challenge we really need to face is using more sustainable materials. Luckily, in the industries you work in, the amount of plastic being used is not very significant, but still in more value-added products, there is plastic involved. And as I mentioned, the norms are going to be more and more restrictive in terms of single-use plastic. So I encourage you to take a look into these solutions, not Platipa, so that you have other options in mind other than plastic. Well, understanding your soil, make smarter decisions by analyzing your soil needs and control the process and characteristics. All of you are much more experts than me in this topic, but we do have some knowledge. For example, in our advisory board, the chief agricultural officer of Mars is part of this group. So he insists in the need for making smarter decisions and really understanding the soil needs, not only with technology, but also with resilient agriculture mechanisms and so on. We really need to bring our eyes into the soil, and we really need to pay more attention to what is happening over there. So in that sense, I have big hopes on CRISPR technology coming in to the wide market, and also I have concerns about how the general public is going to respond to these gene edited foods. Many speakers today have pointed out that plant-based trend or plant-based diet becoming a norm. So you are lucky in that sense because you are operating in a sector that is a healthy option that is plant-based, and we can use this also as a raw material to transforming it into substitutes. So I thought this pate was it was a fun solution to bring up today, just to spark your imagination into how can you transform your product into something with more high value added, which is very demanded nowadays, which is plant-based options. And also, and to end, the fact that healthy, cool snacking, we also talked about today how healthy is cool nowadays. So we are lucky. Consumers want to achieve well-being also through their diet. So we can do this through our product, but we can do this if consumers buy it. And how do we make consumers buy and be interested in our product? Because the thing is that melon and watermelon compete against other snacking categories. They don't compete against other fruits. We have to have in mind that we are competing against other snacking categories, which are much more attractive in the supermarket. So how do we make it interesting for our consumers to choose us instead of other snacking options? Thank you very much for listening to what I had to share with you. I would be super happy to answer all of your questions. I'm leaving here my email details so that you can contact me whenever you'd like.
Excellent, Beatriz. Thank you so much for your contribution. It's good to finish with this positive image that there are plenty of opportunities, also in a different way. Maybe we are a little bit stuck in our mind how to innovate, but I think there are some very inspiring ideas. There are a few questions, Beatriz. Maybe I can start with the first one from the audience as well. How does it work in terms of investment in projects that you are working on? Right? So you mentioned you have contribution of €2.5 million investments. So how does it work? So if there are any investors from the audience, how if they would like to approach you, or how do you cooperate in this?
Mm-hmm. So we were built by a family-owned food company here in Spain. So we operated as their family office. We were created to understand what the challenges for the food system are, and then map out those interesting solutions and invest in them directly with the money of this family-owned business. But we have seen that there are many more interesting opportunities out there than the ones we can invest with only the money we had from this family, right? So what we have done now is open up to other people, other companies that are willing to invest in food startups. And we invite them to presentations every 3 months in which we present investment opportunities. And these are open. They would have to contact me. We only invite strategic investors. This means that since we know the food sector is very particular, we only want food operators to be investors because they really understand, and apart from the money they can invest in the startup, they can also contribute with strategic advice because it's a very unique business. So we don't want investors that only understand tech because they believe the company is going to scale super quickly and so on. We only want strategic investors, food operators that want to invest in food companies. The amount that I put out there is only the money that we personally as KM0 have invested, but we have managed much more investment from other investors.
Okay, very clear. And are there any characteristics or other, you describe what type of companies you like as being as an investor. Are there any other characteristics that the company need to fulfill if they want to invest?
So in terms of the investor, as I said, the main requirement is for them to be an operator in the food system. In terms of the types of startups we bring into the conversation and that we present as investment opportunities, they work in the alternative meat space, also innovations for retail in terms of technological innovations, any solution that makes food more sustainable, healthier. We like the basis for us is for the solution to have a positive impact in the world because they are putting forward a solution that is making food healthier and more sustainable. So that's the main requirement. Of course, when we look and revise the characteristics, we go and meet the team and we understand the projection, the market and everything. So it's much more complex, but our main goal is to support projects with a positive impact because we really believe that we need a fast transformation in our food system, and we cannot do this on our own. So this is why we are a very collaborative organization. So our hands are we are super open to have you on board if you are interested in joining this squad.
Yeah, and how international it is. Eh? One of the questions was, are Spanish partners in, or how international? Can you describe? Is it a global fund or squad?
Yes, it's 100% international. Of course, there are many Spanish people, Spanish-speaking people as well, because our focus is to become the most relevant think tank in Spanish language. So of course there I would say there is 50-50%, but as I mentioned, we have the global sustainability lead of Unilever, we have the chief agricultural advisor of Mars, Danone. You also mentioned hydroponics and aeroponics, so we have in-farm, aerofarms, so super international. We just look for the most crazy pioneers in our sector and we try to involve them.
Okay, that is, I think answers a lot of questions from the audience. Then more on the advisor and the products that you showed and presented. One was on the communication. Do you think that the agribusiness sector knows how to adequately communicate in its innovations and its commitment to sustainability? Are we doing this in a good way, or how can we improve this?
Mm-hmm. I would say the CPG industry is doing a much better job. So more processed foods have the capacity to communicate better, and they are doing it through many types of campaigns and on their packaging and so on. But in the fruit and veg and fresh produce, we've still got a long way to go in terms of how to communicate where the product comes from, for example, what its benefits are. So I think there is a very large opportunity because barely no one is doing it, right? So there it will be very important to think of ways of communicating and conveying the message I pointed out. For example, the QR code that leads you to the farmer that grew your produce, and to tell the story. And we do believe that consumers are increasingly interested in this story. But of course, not all of the consumers are interested in the story. It depends on what type of supermarket you're in. We also mentioned the pandemic, the families being more sensitive to price. So of course it's nice to have, and we do have to be differentiated in this very competitive supermarket. But not all of the consumers are going to appreciate that extra information. I think we are very ethnocentric in that sense. We believe what happens, for example, in Spain, in Europe, is the norm. But if we look at the numbers, the majority of the population is just starting to be able to spend a bit more. They're looking into eating more meat. So this is why I'm inviting you to have like a very global approach, because when we talk about the future of meat as a very hot and growing trend, the reality is that developing countries now are not interested in alternatives. They're interested in eating more meat. So let's really think about the numbers in a global perspective. And of course, let's try to do our best in communicating. And the consumer is going to be more and more interested and more aware of the needs of more healthy and sustainable claims.
Yeah. Okay, thanks so much. And then being a little bit more specific in terms of target group, you mentioned already snacking and the snacking category, and we are competing with other industries. One question we have from our side is how to seduce and attract the youngest generation to increase the melon and watermelon consumption. Could you share your thoughts about this? How can we attract more younger people to buy into this category?
Mm-hmm. I showed on the image some products which were fermented drinks composed also with watermelon, for example. So they have the possibility to connect more to the consumer, right? A ready product that is more beautiful and that has the health claims on top and so on. It's going to be more at the same level than other snack options for the younger generations. And for the younger generations, they're always going to be interested in more like how it depends on how young, right? But many are going to be interested in more healthy, more sustainable claims. Price is also going to be a factor, but I would say it's being more like a transformed product, so not just the raw fruit. So the melon as we've seen it up to today, it's a worrying category. It doesn't grow much. At least in Spain, it's not a very growing category. So we really have to rethink if we have to insert it in drinks, in other ready products, but we cannot stay the same. So I believe staying the same is like going backwards. So we really have to think about taking the next step with collaborations, because it's not easy to say, hey, just start producing fermented drinks and you've produced melons all your life. You can count on collaborations. You need to reach out. That's what we are here for, to facilitate those collaborations and enable anyone to connect with a person that can make them something new. So it's a challenge, we know, but there are opportunities out there. You really need to rely on collaborations.
I think that's a fantastic ending comment, Beatriz. So if people would like to collaborate with you, also of course with Rijk Zwaan, but please reach out to you. And I'd like to thank you so much for your contribution and your lively presentation. And well done, compliments. And I'm sure the audience has appreciated your contribution. So thank you so much.
I truly appreciate your time and your invitation. Thank you so much. I posted my contact details on the chat, so you can reach out.
Perfect. Thank you, Beatriz. Okay, so then we come to the end of this webinar, Inspiring Consumers Together. I hope you liked this event. It is also available. We will share the link to the video. The presentations will be available. If you send a message to Fatima, you can get the copies. And it is recorded, so we will also you can also share this a link later to colleagues or to your customers. And we hope we have inspired you with new ideas. And let's look for a promising future for the melon and the watermelon category. I'd like to thank my colleagues in Spain for supporting and organizing this event. I'd like to thank you for your attention. And hope to see you somewhere live soon. And we will finish with a short movie of this event. And hope to see you soon somewhere. Thank you. Bye-bye.